Good morning, Tampa Bay. What is going on? Hump Day edition, Wednesday, October the 19th, 8 a.m. live. Channelside in the morning on the Channelside Sports Network. Got a lot to work through today, right? It's early in the season for the Lightning. Early in the season, but not the way that you want to start if you're the Tampa Bay Lightning. You know, lose the home opener against the Flyers in a game that they pretty much controlled. Yeah, not the outcome that we were hoping for. The Orlando Magic tip off their season tonight in Detroit. And Ben Roethlisberger brings up some good points about Tom Brady. And then Tom Brady is kind of interesting comments, if you will. Right? That's I think that's where we stand right now with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers is the team's not performing well. And at the bottom of the hour, we'll jump into the Orlando Magic, and we'll talk about some of my thoughts heading into the season, some of my predictions, some of my projections for where I think this team is. And like I said, we'll do that at the bottom of the hour. Thank you to everybody that's tuning in. Go ahead, please hit that like button. That will push the live stream to YouTube's front page and tell people that, hey, we enjoy what we're seeing. And we think you may enjoy what you're seeing, listening, and all of that as well. Ben Roethlisberger doesn't think that Tom Brady is enjoying playing football anymore. And I don't know if I can really refute that. I don't know how I feel about that. I don't know if I disagree with that comment or not. You know, we know that Tom Brady is a competitor. We know that Tom Brady out of all people in the NFL is probably one of the fiercest competitors. That's the reason why he's played for such a long time in his NFL career. We know that about Brady, right? But to me, I've said this. I feel like I've said this almost every week, even on weeks where he's performed decently. I feel like I've said this every week where it looks like Tom Brady is just kind of going through the motions. Like it looks like there's something off. I don't want to say like I don't want to try and project what I think it is. You know, marriage, businesses, other ventures outside of football. I can't sit here and speculate what I think it is because I don't know what it is. Nobody knows what it is outside of Tom Brady and possibly outside of Giselle. Nobody really knows that. Maybe his closest friends do, but we don't know that, and we can't assume that we do know that, right? Ben's comments said that he watches Tom Brady and he's like, there's no way that he's enjoying playing football anymore. He's not he can't be enjoying this. You know, I've talked about this before, is Tom Brady is the third lowest in average time to throw in the NFL. That's not where you want your pocket passing non-mobile quarterback to be. You don't want him third lowest in an average time to throw, but that's where he is because the offensive line is struggling to pick up protections for Tom Brady. However, on the flip side, Tom Brady is only 22nd in sacks. He's not taking a lot of sacks. He's not like Joe Burrow where he's just getting obliterated every play. Sure, he's having to get the ball out quick, but that's that grizzled old veteran that understands the game of football, Tom Brady. That's what we're seeing from Tom Brady right now. Is we're seeing a quarterback that knows how to get the ball out, that knows how to not take the sack unless it's absolutely out of his control. There have been a couple of occasions where it has been out of his control. Defense gets dialed up, offensive line can't hold up. Tom Brady is now not standing upright. And I know that he's having a good and this is what's really strange to me is Tom is top 5 in completion percentage, in yards, in passer rating. He's not playing poorly. It's the offense that's struggling though, as an entire unit. And maybe it does have a lot to do with Tom Brady, but here's the thing about the offense. Here's what we have to realize is it's not like it's football or I'm sorry, it's not like it's basketball where one guy can play well and then the team plays poorly and it has no effect on the actual game. When your quarterback is in the top 5 in passing yards, is in the top 5 in completion percentage, is in the top 5 in passer rating. When your quarterback is in these positions, it's hard to understand why the offense is struggling because largely everything runs through the quarterback. And if he's performing well, then how is the offense struggling so hard? I'll tell you, Leonard Fournette is now 19th in rushing. They're finding out that they're struggling to run the ball and completely abandoning it. They're turning it. They're turning these passes into the flat and these backfield and almost like pitches. They're turning these into their running plays now. Maybe that's part of the reason why Tom Brady's completion percentage is so high. You know, we've noted almost every week he struggled to connect with somebody. Some weeks it's Mike Evans, some weeks it's Chris Godwin, some weeks it's Russell Gage. If Julio Jones ever gets on the field, maybe one week it'll be Julio Jones. But we know that he does struggle. He has and he has all 6 weeks to connect with everybody. Right? It's not like I think the only week where he didn't struggle to connect with anybody was against Green Bay. Every single wide receiver outside of Scotty Miller caught all but one of their targets. Every single wide receiver. Russell Gage, Rashad Perryman, I think Kalen, like everybody did that except for Scotty Miller. Scotty Miller, I think, missed 4 of his targets. But to me, it's hard to figure that out because then when you look and you go, okay, so the team is 21st overall in total offensive yards. In total offense, they're 21st overall. But on the flip side, on defense, they're 7th overall in total defense, and they're 5th overall in points allowed. The defense was so. I feel like I have to rehash this every morning almost because I don't think people are understanding this. The defense was so dominant that they're still living off of the first 3 weeks of the season. That's where the defense is. The defense is so dominant that they're still living off the first 3 weeks of the season. Right? Like I'm just that to me is hard to that's a struggle for me. That's where I kind of struggle is something is there's some sort of issue with the team and it has to start with the coaching, right? It has to start up top. You can't tell me that it's not going to start up top. It has to. I'm starting to feel like the team doesn't respond well to what Todd Bowles is putting out there. I'm not saying that they're not respecting Todd Bowles, that they're disrespectful to him. I'm not saying that he's a bad coach. I'm saying that there's some sort of disconnect between what Todd Bowles is saying versus what Bruce Arians was saying, because this is vastly the exact same team we've seen for the last 3 years, minus a handful of guys, right? This is what we're seeing. We're seeing blown coverages. That touchdown pass to Najee Harris, I could have walked into the end zone. He was completely untouched. He had nobody even near him. That's problematic when you've got one of the top defenses to have such an egregious breakdown in coverage. Communication's not there. It seems like there's a lot of guys that are out there playing for themselves and not playing for the guy next to them. And we know that that needs to be your top priority in football. Is you need to be out there and you need to be playing for the guy that you're lined up next to on either side, on both sides. Hell, we know that that's where you need to be. I'm getting all worked up here. The Bucs are third overall in sacks. They've got 21 sacks. And they're tied for fourth overall in turnovers with 3. Now I know what you may here's what's crazy. Is the Eagles are number 1 in terms of turnovers. I guess they're number 1 in terms of everything on defense, but in terms of turnovers, the Eagles are number 1 with 12. 12 they've got 4 times the amount of turnovers that we do. And we're sitting 4th. Think about that for just a second. The Vikings are second with 4. The Eagles have tripled the Vikings' output in turnovers, and the Vikings are second. That Eagles defense is just is something else. That Eagles defense is insane to me. We've got to figure out where we're going wrong though, and I think Ben Roethlisberger might kind of be. He might have a point where he says that he doesn't think Tom Brady's enjoying playing football anymore. You know, he just recently compared it to getting deployed in the military. And like, I hate when guys make comparisons to things that they don't know about. I really do. I hate when guys make comparisons to things that they don't know about. I don't like Tom Brady comparing playing football to being deployed in the military because you've never been deployed in the military. I didn't like when Colin Kaepernick called the NFL slavery because you weren't around then. You may have heard stories, but you never experienced it, so you can't speak on it. The same thing with Tom Brady in this military comment. Like, it's hard for me to focus on my personal life for half of the year. You've been doing it for 2 decades. For over 2 decades, you've been able to do it now. Like, why is it all of a sudden, why is it problematic now? Why is it an issue for you to be able to work out your personal life? It's been 2 decades. You haven't figured this out yet? Like, I feel that there's so many other things going on for Tom Brady that when you pair up a 3-3 record with they're in the bottom half of the NFL in total offense. Tom Brady doesn't want to be there. You know, Tom Brady's last year in New England was atrocious, but it was atrocious because his number 1 wide receiver was James White. After that, there was nobody. James White led the team in receptions by 40. That's how much of a drop off there was in passing. There were no targets for Tom Brady his last season in New England. Julian Edelman was out with an injury. He didn't have the luxury of having Edelman there. Tom Brady has the luxury of Mike Evans and Chris Godwin and Russell Gage and eventually Julio Jones. You know, obviously he's having to utilize Leonard Fournette a lot because the offensive line is struggling to hold up. I get that. And a lot of times Leonard Fournette is able to turn those into plus gains. Catch the ball 2-3 yards behind the line. A lot of times he is able to turn those into positive yardage because A, he's really good. B, he's a bruiser. And C, it's a running play. This is what the Buccaneers have resorted to on offense because the offensive line is unable to hold up. So do I think Ben is correct when he says that Tom Brady's not enjoying football? Um I currently believe that anybody that's on this Buccaneers team that had aspirations of going to the Super Bowl should not be enjoying playing football right now. They should all be pissed off. They should all hate playing football right now because it's not working. Nothing across the board right now is working for this team. Sure, they're sitting 3-3 and they're atop the NFC South, but they're atop the weakest division in the NFL. The only other division that could possibly be on the level of being kind of weak would to me would be the AFC South. Got the Texans rebuilding, the Jags rebuilding, the Colts not really sure, and the Titans. The Titans have no wide receivers. They brought in Robert Woods. He's basically been a non-factor at all, not utilized. Ryan Tannehill's not a great quarterback. Derrick Henry doesn't look exactly like the Derrick Henry of old. He's had some flashes this season, but the NFC South is the weakest division. And sitting atop the NFC South with a 3-3 record is not something to be proud of, Bucs fans. You shouldn't be proud that we're sitting atop the NFC South with a 3-3 record. And two of those wins are against two teams in the weakest division. That's what we have to understand is something is not working for this team and we've got to figure it out. We can hash it out as fans all we want. We can hash it out as guys who study football, who watch game film and get media coverage. Like we can hash this out all we want, but it has to start in the locker room. Right? It doesn't start with us. We're not out there making plays. We're out there. We're sitting here. We're dissecting plays. That's what we're doing. We're not making the plays happen or not happen for that matter. So when you have this, and this is where fans start to lose me. Well, Bucs still have one of the best defenses in the NFL, but do they? Or like I said at the beginning of the show, this team is living off of being extremely dominant in the first 3 weeks. Through the first 3 weeks, this Buccaneers team, believe it or not, was more dominant than the Philadelphia Eagles. They were. The Bucs were the number one overall defense through the first 3 weeks of the season, and then something happened. I don't know if it's because they ran into Patrick Mahomes, who was able to put up 41 points, and it kind of rattled them. And now they're kind of just spinning their wheels and, self-doubt or whatever. But it's not the same as it once was. It's totally different. You have Marcus Mariota and the Atlanta Falcons without RB1, without Cordero Patterson, rush for over $150. No Cordero Patterson and no Kyle Pitts. And somehow this Atlanta Falcons team was able to keep the game within 6 points. They're getting to the quarterback. 3 turnovers is not a lot. 6 weeks into the season, 3 turnovers is not a lot. They're not creating turnovers. But for the vast majority of it, I just told you the stats. They've got 3 and they're tied for 4th. Second place is the Minnesota Vikings with 4. So you're not really it's not like there's a huge disparity in turnovers. It's not like there's a huge disparity in the numbers between the teams, right? It's not like the Bucs are sitting with 3 turnovers, like 25th in the league. Tied for 4th with 3. Teams just aren't generating turnovers this season, and it's showing. So I'm not going to use turnovers and go, well, they're not creating turnovers. This defense is terrible. I'm not going to use that because outside of the Eagles, this is the norm. This is the narrative and the storyline for the NFL for defenses this year. This is where defenses lie. Not creating turnovers. The Bucks are not good on third down on offense. The Bucks are middle of the pack in terms of stopping teams on third down on defense. It's when you start really diving in to look at, okay, where's this team going wrong? It's staying on the field and getting off the field is for me, when I'm watching game film and I'm watching the NFL all 22 and I'm watching all of the coaches' film. It's the struggling to get off of the field on defense on third down. Sure, they're only allowing 17 points per game, which is again in the top 5 in the NFL. But you're still struggling to get off the field to give your offense more of an opportunity. And then when the offense gets on the field, a lot of times we're seeing 3 and outs. Or we're seeing, you're almost 100% guaranteed to get a Leonard Fournette run on first down. It's almost 100% guaranteed. It's almost as guaranteed as getting a W-2 in the mail. What's the phrase? The death and taxes are the only things guaranteed in life. And Leonard Fournette running. It's guaranteed. Is it the playbook? It's still the same playbook. I talked about this on Monday. Is it Bruce? Was Bruce Arians actually calling the plays? We hear. Remember when Eric Bieniemy was one of like the top candidates to become a head coach just a couple of years ago, and then we heard, oh well, Andy Reid is actually calling the offense. It's actually not Eric Bieniemy calling the offense for the Kansas City Chiefs. And then Andy Reid had to come out. Andy Reid had to do some damage control. Oh, no. He's calling the offense. It's not me. I'm just chiming in every now and then. I feel like we need a Bruce Arians press conference to say, like, hey, Byron Leftwich was calling the offense while I was the head coach. Because everybody's against Todd Bowles right now. Everybody's against Byron Leftwich right now. We've got people saying, oh, fire Leftwich, fire Bowles. Like, and do what? Do you really think that it would be even remotely smart to look at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who are struggling with the same playbook they have now had for how many years? For 4 years? At least 4. It's the same playbook. It's Byron Leftwich's offensive playbook. And they're struggling right now to execute that playbook that has been installed for multiple years. You really think that firing Byron Leftwich and getting a new playbook, you think that that's going to help the offense? Sure, we see it all the time. Offensive coordinators get fired, a new guy gets placed, and then the next game they go off for 40 points and you go, see, I told you so. I told you. And then they come back, and then what happens? And then they're back to reality the following week. So, like, firing Byron Leftwich, that's not going to get it done for you guys. I'm sorry. It's just not. It's not going to work. It's not going to get it done. Firing Todd Bowles, what is that going to do? Todd Bowles is the defense. Todd Bowles is holding up his end of the bargain. 7th in total defense. I'll take a top 7 defense. Excuse me. I'll take a top 7 defense. You should take a top 7 defense as well. A top 5 in points allowed. You should be accepting of a top 5 defense in points allowed. Especially when you have what you have on offense. Especially when you have Tom Brady. And the skill set position players that this Tampa Bay Buccaneers offense has, a top 5 defense in points allowed and a top 7 overall defense, you should be looking at being a 5-1, 4-2 team. But instead, you're a 3-3 team that has looked bad in 5 of your 6 games. You're lucky that you're 3-3 right now with the way the offense has performed. Mike Evans could be in danger of not hitting 1,000 yards this season. That's how poor the offense is. Remember when I said death, taxes, and Leonard Fournette running on first down are guaranteed? Mike Evans getting 1,000 yards every season should also fall under that umbrella, except this year is going to be scary and it's going to be very close unless they figure it out. If Mike Evans misses any time this year, I think we might end up having to kiss that record goodbye, because Mike Evans is not the type of wide receiver that's going to go off for 200 yards. That's just not the way. That's not the way this offense is built. He's not going to go off and be like, oh, Mike Evans had 9 receptions for 212 yards. You're not going to see that. As good as Mike Evans is, that's not the way this offense flows. That's not the way this offense works. And that's kind of not the way that Tom Brady as a quarterback works either. If Mike Evans were ever to have a chance of getting like of going off for a stat line like that, it would be with a guy like Jameis Winston or excuse me, whoever is going to be the quarterback for the Buccaneers next. That's when that's going to happen. But it's not going to happen with Tom Brady and Byron Leftwich and Todd Bowles. It's not going to happen. So we are now concerned that that Mike Evans might not get his 1,000 yards receiving. I'm concerned. And you know what? Maybe you're not concerned, but I am, because to me, that stat matters. That stat to me matters, because we're trying to have we want one of our guys to go down as one of the greatest of all time, right? Like Tom Brady, we love Tom Brady. But Tom Brady is not our guy. Right? Like, does that make sense? Tom Brady is not our guy. That's where it's different. Mike Evans is our guy. Mike Evans right now is averaging 71.6 yards per game, which should put him, he's on pace for 1,200 yards. So maybe it's not time to sound the alarms on Mike Evans right now, right? But I'm telling you, if the offense struggles, if they struggle to find Mike Evans like they have, like this is where it becomes scary for me, right? Is because if they struggle to find Mike Evans at all, like they struggled against Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh was missing their top 3 players in their secondary, and you struggled to get Mike Evans the ball. Like you shouldn't have struggled to get Mike Evans the ball. He only had 4 targets. Against Atlanta, he had 8 targets. 10 targets against the Chiefs. 4 against the Saints. We know obviously he missed the 4th quarter. And 7 targets against the Cowboys. Like this is, his highest is 10 receptions for 103 yards against the Chiefs. We know that extra game is going to help, but imagine like we don't have that extra game and now we're running into an issue. Something's got to be addressed. That's what we've got to look into it, and we've got to figure out where it starts. I think it starts up top, and I think it starts with a lack of, I guess, respect almost for Todd Bowles. I know I said earlier at the beginning of the show, I don't think that it's a lack of respect, but what else could it be? What else could it be? If Todd Bowles is having to come out in week 6 and say that we've got guys living in a fantasy land, I'm sure that was a twofold double-edged sword comment. I'm sure it meant he was talking to the team and he was also talking to the fans and the media. If you're living off the Super Bowl run, you're in a fantasy land. The time for talking is over. It's time to put up or shut up. That's not addressed at the media. The media doesn't put up or shut up. The media talks. The time for talking is always now for the media. That's how media works. That's how we work. Bottom of the hour. As promised, Orlando Magic season tip-off tonight in Detroit against the Pistons. Pistons are favored on the money line. They're minus 155. I'm fine with that. I've said yesterday, I said on Monday, I think the Pistons are a little bit further along in terms of the rebuild. Solely for the fact that they started before. That's the only reason. I think the Magic have done good in the draft. They've made good trades, which have net them draft picks. They got Franz Wagner. You're welcome. I'm German, by the way. I can pronounce a German name. Sometimes I just get in the heat of the moment because I don't speak German, but I understand it. What are we looking for? What are we looking for from this Orlando Magic team tonight? We want to see if that Wagner and Wendell Carter Jr. We want to see if that chemistry is still there. That pick and roll was deadly in the preseason. We want to see if it's still there. We want to see who's going to become the floor general. Are we going to have a floor general? And to be completely frank, do we need a floor general? Do we need somebody to step up as a vocal leader, or can we get through this season as like a leadership by committee where the entire team is more or less all stepping up and all holding each other accountable? You know, we saw Paolo Banchero in the preseason kind of take on that role, but he's not playing with the starters, right? That's where Banchero is. He wasn't playing with and against starters, right? But he took on that leadership role. He was directing traffic. He was taking the ball to the top of the key and kind of calling out plays. Is that what's going to happen? You know, I would be A-okay if Paolo Banchero came in, took the leadership role, and then became the guy for the Orlando Magic. He was the first overall pick for a reason. You don't take a first overall pick just solely for the fact that he can score. You take him because he has those intangibles and he has that X factor and he has all of these other traits that make it easy for the guys to improve around him. Jalen Suggs will be available tonight. There's so many positives for the Orlando Magic. You know, Corey and I put out our predictions for how the Orlando Magic might finish the season. Corey's got them going 40-42. I've got them winning 34 games. But if I'm being totally realistic, I would be okay with a 37 or a 38 win. I feel that my projection may be a little bit low. I do not think that tonight is going to be any key indicator because I don't think that the Pistons are a contender yet either. I think that they're doing some good things. They're rebuilding their roster properly as well. Said they may have started a little bit sooner than the Orlando Magic did in terms of the rebuild, but I'm okay. I really think that this team should, at the bare minimum, at the absolute bare minimum, I feel like this Orlando Magic team should be a play-in game contender. At the minimum. Possibly even as high as a 6th seed. But I don't see, like, Markelle Fultz saying 4th seed. I don't think it's there yet. I do think that they're going to sneak up on some teams. I do think that they're going to catch some teams off guard. And I do see the Orlando Magic this season starting to show that progression. You know, I talked about this during the preseason. A lot of these close games that they won in the preseason, they would have lost last year. They weren't good in close game situations last year, and they lost, I think, all but one. I think they had 7 or 8 games that were within 5 points, and they lost all of them but one. So this team is showing improvement. They're showing signs of development. And that's what I'm looking for. That's what you're looking for. Preseason is important. And we're going to talk about that when we talk about the Lightning. We've talked about that at nauseum for the Buccaneers. Tom Brady not playing in preseason outside, like, people need preseason is there not because it doesn't matter. Preseason is there is to get you going towards the regular season. The Magic looked good in preseason. And you can't tell me it didn't matter. John Morant was out there in preseason. Don't tell me preseason doesn't matter. Rookie of the Year and Most Improved Player of the Year is out there in preseason for what? He doesn't need to be out there, right? But preseason matters. If you take your craft serious, you want as much playing time as you possibly can get. That's what it boils down to. Preseason matters. Preseason does matter, especially if you are a team like the Orlando Magic. If you're a team like the Detroit Pistons or the Houston Rockets or the Oklahoma City Thunder, preseason matters. This is when you start working on your chemistry. You start working on your plays because you don't want to start the season in the hole. Sure, the bottom half of the Eastern Conference playoff bracket is not the greatest, right? We saw how many games did the Hawks win last year? I think the Hawks won 42 games last year. So they were 42-40, I believe. And that's what it took to get into the play-in game. Being just barely above average. Just barely above 500. So you don't want to start in the hole. You don't want to start 0-8 because you didn't play anybody that's going to play in the regular season in preseason. You don't want to start that far down. You're 8 games into the season and you're already having to dig yourself out of a hole. Like, that's a terrible, from the coaching set, like that's just terrible all across the board. You don't want to be in a position like that. Paolo Banchero is still the overall favorite to win Rookie of the Year. Of course, these are all of these numbers are according to the DraftKings Sportsbook. He was plus 180 to win. Keegan Murray is second overall, plus 800. So it's realistically it's Banchero's award to lose. And everything that we've seen from him, whether it was preseason, whether it was the Summer League Pro-Ams, whether it was Summer League itself, everything that we've seen from Paolo Banchero has shown that he's going to be a force in this league. And barring any sort of catastrophic injury, I don't see a way that Paolo Banchero doesn't win the Rookie of the Year. And I think that's why Vegas has favored him so highly. Chet Holmgren was once higher. I'm not sure where, but plus 180. I'm not sure where Jabari Smith is. Jabari Smith wasn't even in like the top 5, top 6. And I think that's because we saw what his utilization is going to be this year with the Houston Rockets. And here's where I have some issues with how odds are developed. Jamal Mosley is dead last with at plus 10,000 to win Coach of the Year. Coach of the Year used to mean that you have taken a bad team, and the Orlando Magic last year were a bad team. They were 22 wins. They were 22-60 last year. If they improve by 12 wins, if they improve by 20 wins, if they make the playoffs, how are you at plus 10,000? But you've got Franz Wagner and Wendell Carter Jr. both plus 5,000 to win Most Improved Player, which is kind of middle of the pack. To me, it doesn't add up. Jamal Mosley Shouldn't be dead last. He shouldn't be a front runner, don't get me wrong. But coach of the year used to mean you took a crappy team and you turned them around. The Magic are on the upswing. So you mean to tell me that that means nothing in terms of odds? I think the Magic are going to surprise a lot of people this year. I don't know if they're going to surprise enough people to make, Jamal Mosley a front runner to win coach of the year. I might entice myself to throw down a few bucks on that award though. I mean, plus 10,000 is some pretty damn good odds, right? That's a huge underdog. It's huge. Wagner and Carter, like I said, are plus 5,000 to win the most improved. I think we see Wendell Carter Jr. kind of work his way up in terms of where he's going to land towards the end of the season. Like, because we know that Franz had a good rookie season. We knew that, right? Like, we knew that he was good in his rookie season. Averaged 15 points. Played well in Germany. And then I know the playing in FIBA. I know that has no merit on NBA awards. I get that. And I do think that helped him drastically. But I think his ceiling was already a little higher than Dell's was. I think his ceiling was a little bit higher. So you're looking at, to me, if Wendell Carter Jr. continues to play like we saw in the preseason, I think that's how you see that eclipse. Because Franz could realistically, he can average 15 points. And he could still be a very, very big contributor to this Orlando Magic team at 15 points per game. I think we see Dell. I'm gonna say we see Dell average a double-double this year. How's that for a hot take? I think we're gonna see Dell average at least 12 boards. Call me crazy, but I don't see why I don't see why that couldn't be a thing. Right? I think that I don't see why that couldn't be a thing. Plus Jonathan Isaac possibly coming back. Jonathan Isaac could win most improved player of the year, could he not? I mean, he hasn't played in 2 years. He's basically a rookie again. What Dell last year averaged 15 and 10. I think we're going to see an improvement. I think we're going to see something along the lines of like an 18 and 12, 18 and 13. I don't know if he's going to get up to the point where he's averaging 20. I just think the Magic are going to distribute the ball too often to have so many guys in their rotation averaging, 15 plus per game. In a perfect world, sure. He's got a career average of 12 and just under 9. I think we're going to see it. We're going to see a leap ahead. I'm going to go. I'll say we'll see an increase from 15, which was his average last year. We'll see an increase from 15. I'll give him 18. We're going to see an increase, 18 points, and at least 12 rebounds per game. Willing to die on that fence. Franz averaged 15.2 last year. I think we see an uptick in that, but I don't think we need to see an uptick. Where I want to see the uptick is in 3-point shooting percentage. I want to see an improvement from the 35.4% from last year. I think he's going to improve on the boards. We saw that in the preseason. And I want to see him distribute the ball a little more. And I really think that we're going to see a huge leap from the 2.9 that he averaged last season in terms of assists. I think we're going to see a huge leap, possibly to 5 or 6 per game. And most of that is going to be to Dell. And I think that's why you're going to see Dell's numbers jump. I really think that that's what we're going to see. You're going to see them swing the ball, and Franz is going to hit Paulo, or he's going to hit Dell, and we're going to see this camaraderie that this team is. I'm excited, especially about the front court. The back court, sure, we might have some questions about the back court. You know, Cole Anthony, Markel Fultz, obviously he's out. But like Terrence Ross is Terrence Ross. Terrence Ross is the ripe age of 31. Of course, I say ripe tongue in cheek because I'm the ripe age of 36. But hey, who's counting age? You're only as old as you feel. And you guys see my background. Make sure you follow Please Rewind. 40,000 members on Facebook. We're doing pretty damn well over there. Markel Fultz obviously is out. Jalen Suggs is back in. We do have. I guess the only real questions that we have are with the backcourt for this team, because we know what we're going to expect. Sure, we've got questions about Bol Bol and Mo Bamba, and we've got questions about Jonathan Isaac. How is he going to come back? But I think this team survives even if Jonathan Isaac doesn't come back into full form. If Jonathan Isaac doesn't come back and look like a top 5 draft pick like he was, I think we're okay. I think Jonathan Isaac at this point, coming back and playing the way that he played prior to going out is a luxury for the Orlando Magic at this time. Because we've seen Franz develop. Not even develop. We saw him have a good rookie year. We are seeing Dell step up. We're going to see Banchero have a good rookie year. We're going to see Caleb Houston shoot it well from long range. We're likely going to see an improvement in Cole Anthony and in Jalen Suggs. And when Markel Fultz comes back, we're going to see improvements on these guys. So I think realistically, Jonathan Isaac coming back and playing the way that he played prior to going out is a luxury for this team to have him come off of the bench. Because I don't see any way that Jonathan Isaac takes over a starting role. He's not going to take over for Franz, and he's not going to take over for Paulo. I don't see Jonathan Isaac starting on this team anymore. And you know what? If he comes back and he plays well, it's a $17 million salary that you could put on the trade block. And you could say, you know what? Let's move Jonathan Isaac. Do you think that if he comes back and he's playing well, that he's going to be happy coming off the bench? I don't know. A 25-year-old top 5 overall pick coming back playing well. I don't know if I'm in his shoes. I don't know if I'm happy about that. And I'm saying, hey, you know what? It might be time to move on. If he comes back and he averages the last regular season he played, he averaged just under 12 and just under 7. 12.7 boards. Sign me up for that coming off of the bench. I'm totally fine with that. Career average? Not as hot. 9.3, 5.4. I'm not crazy about that. Obviously he's not going to play tonight. Which is crazy because he's got a hamstring. But, we saw this in football, right? And I tried to say that, I tried to talk about this when Chris Godwin went down with the hamstring. People are like, oh my God, Chris Godwin with the hamstring. Hamstring injury. And I know that we have our plagues in Tampa with the Buccaneers. I know we have our hamstring issues, right? It's almost a guarantee that that some wide receiver is going to pull their hammy. But when you're coming back from a knee injury, a hamstring injury usually occurs. That's a typical thing because you're favoring the knee. I know. I've got a terrible right knee. I've got tendonitis in my right knee. I've injured my right knee plenty of times. And whenever I would come back and I would take the court or I would take the field, I'd tweak a hammy. It happens. Like that you're favoring your knee. And by favoring your knee, you're straining your hamstring. It's that's how the body works, guys. So when people are going, "Oh my god, he's got the hamstring now. This guy's so injured." It ha- that's the thing. Don't look any further into it because it's a thing. It happens. It happens to all of us. Happens to regular ass people like me. And it happens to professional athletes like them. It's just that's how the human body works. That's how your psyche works when you're trying to come back from a major knee injury. Don't look any further into it. The knee is the issue for Jonathan Isaac. It's the knee that's the issue. And he's, as a result, just like Chris Godwin, got a hammy tweak. That's all. That's all. Don't worry about it. But if he comes back and he averages 11 and 7, 12 and 7 off the bench, perfect. But I think the moment there's any sort of feathers being ruffled about him having to come off of the bench and average those numbers, that's where you make the trade. That's where you make a move. And you say, you know what? Thank you for your time here. You came back, you played well, but you don't want to come off of the bench. We'll move on. And now you can improve at a different position. I did see somebody say that they wanted the Magic to tank this year, which I think is crazy. And I get it. We got one of the best prospects of all time coming out. Or one of the best prospects since what? LeBron? But man, you don't want to tank, especially when you've got a young roster. You want to play as hard as you possibly can play. And you want to improve and you want to build up the rapport. Not just with the team, but with the fans, because the fans are the ones that are coming to watch, that are watching on TV, that are keeping you trending on social media, that are keeping your impressions high so you can get sponsored. Like that's what the fans are doing. You want to build that chemistry. I know I mentioned preseason earlier. We'll wrap up with this. Unfortunately, the Lightning lost the home opener last night to the Philadelphia Flyers 3-2 in a game that the Lightning realistically kind of dominated across the board. So this one stings as it got away from them. It stings. They won in shots, 38-24. They absolutely obliterated the Flyers 61-37% in the face-off, and they 15-6 in takeaways. It wasn't even close. Was not even close in a lot of these metrics, and it just got away. Stammer, of course, scored both of the goals for the Lightning in the power play. There are 2 of 3 on the power play, 66.7%. I'll take it. Any day of the week, we know how strong the Lightning are on the power play. We know that they kind of live and die by the power play. But you dominated most of this game and you still came up on the losing end. And it's a long season. And I'm okay with it. Because we're still seeing things develop. We're still seeing lines being tried out. But here's the issue. And I talked about this earlier. Nobody played in the preseason. The vast majority of our core players did not play in the preseason. And that is problematic because you're starting behind the 8 ball. You're starting behind because you didn't play your star core players in the preseason to give that little push into the regular season. We know that the Lightning know how to win in the playoffs, and we assume that they're going to get to the playoffs. And that's why I'm not sounding any alarms. We're not pushing panic buttons based off of, only winning 1 game right now. Being 1-3 sucks, yeah. But hockey is a super long season. And we know what the Lightning's track record is in the latter half of the season and into the playoffs. We know how they perform. But it would have been nice to see some of these guys play in the preseason because there's guys out with injury. We lost guys, Ryan McDonough, Andre Palat. We lost players. So we've got new guys stepping up and filling in, and we've done some line changes. We've shifted some players around, and we've got new lines for the Lightning. I think that this was a misstep by not having some of these guys play in the preseason and start developing line chemistry. Like, we can rely on skill. We can outskill a lot of other teams. Nikita Kucherov, Victor Hedman, Andrei Vasilevsky, Steven Stamkos, Braden Point. Like, we can outskill a lot of teams, but we can't out team play a lot of other teams if our team didn't have time to develop that chemistry. And I know that they will. I know they will throughout the season. You know, this is the beauty, this is the gift and the curse of doing a live show every morning. Is you've heard me say this when I talk about the Rays. The temperature is going to change. Right? The temperature will change every time depending on the outcome. If you look at the team stats from last night and go, okay, 14 more shots, nearly 30% difference in face-off wins, over double the amount of takeaways, you would expect that the Lightning would have probably won that game like 5-1, 4-1, 5-1, something along those lines, instead of losing it 3-2. If I told you they were 2 of 3 on the power play, you'd go, "Oh yeah, they won that. They won that game handedly," but they didn't. You know, Vazzy gave up 1 rebound to Scott Lawton, who was able to jam it home, and then Van Riemsdyk scored on the power play. It happens. You got a man advantage on a power play. It's going to happen more often than not. That's why when you see these teams, you're like, yeah, they effectively stop the power play 23% of the time for number 1 in the league. It's just like baseball. Baseball, you can be piss poor 75% of the time and still be one of the best guys in the league at the plate. That's how it works. So I'm not sounding the alarm. But it would have been nice to see this team develop that camaraderie and develop that chemistry in the preseason, knowing that we were going to have a different looking roster. Salary cap is going to jump by it could jump to up $4 million next season, which is great for the Tampa Bay Lightning. I mean, we just signed Cirelli, we signed Sergachev, we signed Nick Paul, we signed all of these guys to like these 7+ year deals to keep that cap hit low. You add an extra $4 million to the cap. This team is sitting pretty for a long time. You almost wonder if Julian Brisbois is going out to breakfast with Gary Bettman like Matthew Stafford and Cooper Kupp are doing. Like, he had the wherewithal. You extend, and you know why you do that, because you want to keep that AAV low. You want to keep that cap hit low. But now you're going to tell me you're going to add an extra $4 million to a team that already has all of their core players under contract for 5+ years? Like, the Lightning are in an absolutely beautiful position. A beautiful position heading as they head towards the future. You know, Brisbois said this team is set up to win for a very long time. And if you add an extra $4 million in cap space to this team is set to win for a very long time, this team is set to win even longer. And it's a beautiful position to be in. Forget the record right now. Forget the lack of chemistry between some of these new lines. Forget all of that. And let's look at the bright future for this team, because we know that John Cooper is arguably the best coach in hockey. We know that he sees the game from a completely different aspect than the vast majority of the coaches. We know that this team is going to get it together. But man, if that cap jumps $4 million, good Lord, the NHL is in trouble. This SEC hockey town team, you better watch out for us boys down here in Tampa, man. As good as the Buccaneers could be, this is going to be a hockey town for a very, very long time. And that is going to be our show. Hopefully you enjoyed it. I tried to dissect and give everybody some shine and some play here. We're getting close to having to do this thing for 2 hours. I'm just letting you know. We're getting close to having to run from 8 to 10. Especially as we grow. I love doing it every morning. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. Hopefully you guys smash that thumbs up button for me. And and there wasn't just one person. Thank you for everybody who tuned in. Make sure you follow the Channelside Sports Network across all the social media platforms. Search for the Channelside Sports Network. If you want to chop it up with me, hit me up, Real Danny B. I don't put my personal projections and opinions out on the Channelside Sports Twitter. None of our guys do. All of our guys use their own. Of course, all of our tweets are not reflective of Channelside Sports. Let's have some fun. Magic tip-off tonight at Little Caesars Arena in Detroit, my hometown. Can't wait. Look, there's so much excitement right now, man. October is the greatest month for sports. Absolutely greatest month for sports. We'll see what happens on the injury report for the Buccaneers when that comes out today. I'm Danny. We're going to do it again tomorrow. I will see ya later.